They say the sun has never failed us. It rises, it sets, always, until the day it didn. Single quotes did. It began with shadows bending the wrong way. Not longer, not shorter. Just wrong, leaning away from the light like they knew something we didn't. Birds wheeled overhead in frantic circles. Horses refused to move. And the air carried a silence so heavy it pressed on the skin. On the horizon, a bruise-colored tide began to spill upward. Not night, not storm, something older, something patient. And then, with no sound, no warning, the day folded in half. The sun's face vanished behind a disk of perfect black, ringed in a crown of white fire that writhed and pulsed like it was breathing. In that moment, every clock was wrong. Every rule of the world bent. Some swore they saw figures in that fire. Kings and beasts and faces that hadn't been born yet. Others knelt, certain the end had arrived. But for 7 minutes and 26 seconds, time itself felt like it had been stolen. What happened next would be written in no single book, because the truth scattered in temples, in battlefields, in the hushed diaries of those who had no language for what they saw. It begins so quietly that most people don't even notice. The change is in the air first, but not in the way a weather front moves in. This isn't the heavy, electric pause before a storm or the sly, crisp shift before snow. It is a difference you can't name, as though the substance of the atmosphere has been altered, a subtle replacement you feel rather than see. The air seems thicker, yet lighter, as if the molecules themselves have been rearranged. The colors follow. Grass begins to lean toward a green too deep to belong to daylight. The white paint on the fence takes on a faint yellowing, like old paper that has been left out too long. People's skin, when they turn their faces to you, has a hint of bronze. Under the natural tones, the way gold catches the eye from the corner of a mirror, shadows sharpen. This happens quickly, almost rudely, as if someone has adjusted a setting in the world and not told the occupants. You look down and see your own, clearer edged, darker, and yet somehow less attached to you. For a moment, it feels like it is thinking about moving without you, somewhere nearby. A single bird calls high and urgent, its pitch wrong for the season. It is answered by nothing. The sound hangs in the air until you feel aware of its absence as much as its presence. A breeze lifts and curls around your arm, and then it stops, perfectly, in the middle of its movement. No fading, no natural end, just a shut door. You realize, absurdly, that the world has forgotten how to finish the act of wind. You glance up at the sun. It looks ordinary at first, but there is a quality to the light, cooler, flatter, like a photograph left too long under glass. The sky's blue is beginning to lose its warmth, the way water cools as the sun drops toward the horizon. Except here, it is midday all around you. Life continues. People adjust folding chairs, point cameras, tilt their heads to the dimming sky. None of them, apparently, notice that the color of the world has tipped just slightly toward the uncanny. Notice, and the noticing is enough to make your pulse slow, not from calm, but from something older, something animal. The body, after all, remembers things that the mind prefers not to. Somewhere in the corner of your eye, in the space between shadow and light, something shifts. You turn, expecting to find a branch swaying or a curtain blowing in an unseen window. There is nothing there, but the impression lingers, the sense of being observed, not with malice, but with the kind of detached curiosity you might have for a creature in a glass tank. It is at this point you realize the sky has started to lie. It starts low, so low it could be the distant rumble of an aircraft. Only you cannot locate it. It isn't behind you, or above you, or beneath your feet. It is inside you, curling out from the marrow. It feels like it has weight. Not the crash of thunder, but something more deliberate, more measured, almost polite, as though it is announcing itself without demanding anything from you. And yet, your heart makes the decision to sink to its rhythm without consulting your mind. You think, at first, you might be imagining it, but you catch the tiniest flicker in the eyes of a person standing 20 feet away. They glance sideways, then quickly away, and in that moment you know they hear it too. And they are choosing not to say so. The hum has texture. That's the strangest part. It isn't a tone that can be hummed back, but it has layers, ripples, a grain like wood seen in cross-section. If sound were made of cloth, this would be something heavy and woven tight, pulled against the skin as the light thins toward a crescent sun. The sound grows, not louder, but closer. It begins to nest inside your jaw, just under the hinge, where the bone meets the soft tissue. You feel it when you swallow. You feel it even when you close your ears with your hands, and then, without warning, it stops. The silence that follows is abrupt enough to feel like a physical shove. Your body stumbles internally, as though expecting the next footstep on a staircase that isn't there. The gap it leaves is so large that your mind fills it with an imagined echo. People resume, adjusting tripods, checking lenses, straightening hats. You are the only one who looks around, trying to find the absence. The moment the sun is swallowed, the corona bursts into existence. It is blinding, yes, but also strangely cold, like the shimmer on the surface of snow under a winter moon. It arcs and twists in delicate threads, only they are not uniform, not static. There is movement within movement, patterns that form and dissolve too quickly for certainty, and then your mind makes the first connection. A sweep of light becomes an eye, tilted as though catching sight of you over a shoulder. Another flare stretches into the shape of a hand, or the idea of a hand, reaching not toward you, but past you. The longer you stare, the more you are certain that the shapes are not random. One shifts as though it is speaking, the motion rippling through, the light like a whisper through water. Another, smaller, sharper, darts across the arc like a bird crossing the frame of a camera. You try to blink them into abstraction, to break the spell of recognition, but your mind resists. Once it has assigned meaning, it refuses to let go. The strangest part is the feeling that each shape, each flicker, each impossible outline is aware of its own visibility. It is as if the act of your seeing them has completed some loop, as if their existence required you to witness it, and then they are gone. Or perhaps they were never there, but the sense that you have been noticed does not leave. It begins with the ground, not with the sky. The sky is still a gaping wound where the sun should be, but with the places the light lands, something in the quality of it changes again, in a way no eclipse, brochure, or weather app animation could predict. The shadows lengthen, not outward, but inward, as though they're folding toward themselves. The edges sharpen further still until they almost hum. You see your own shadow stretched out like a sheet pulled taut, but it does not align perfectly with your movements anymore. Turn your head, and there's the barest lag, like an old film, reel catching for a single frame before it keeps pace again. At first you think it's just you. You blink hard, test it by raising your arm. The shadow follows, mostly, but you're certain you saw a fraction of a second where it hesitated, as if considering an alternate action, as if it had been distracted. A murmur rises among those nearby, not panic, not even alarm, more like the sound people make when they see a card trick done perfectly and are not sure. They actually want to know how it worked. You notice the shadows of trees, too. The leaves create their usual dappling, only the dapples are wrong. Instead of scattered teardrop shapes, they are elongated, warped into repeating, identical forms, like a pattern pressed into cloth. Some of them appear to ripple slightly, though the branches above are still. The breeze that had died earlier stirs again, but the shadows do not answer it. They stay pinned, motionless in their warped geometry, while the real branches sway. It's unsettling in a way you can't quite articulate, like watching a conversation, where one person has stopped speaking mid-sentence, but keeps nodding. A child giggles somewhere off to your left. You follow the sound and see a little boy crouched, pressing his hands flat to the ground. He's trying to catch his own shadow, pin it down under his palms. His laughter bubbles up again, and then falters. His hands are still on the grass, but his shadow's hands are not. They're half a beat behind, fingers curling toward the boy's like hesitant claws. The boy blinks. Then he shuffles back, suddenly unsure. His parents don't notice. The air feels denser, not like a storm front, more like a room with two. Many people breathing in it. Every inhalation draws in not just air, but an awareness of all these things the light is touching, and the places it shouldn't be touching at all. Your gaze snags on a line of telephone poles. Their shadows stretch across the road in neat succession, except one. The third shadow from the end bends slightly where no bend exists in the pole itself. It kinks like a broken finger, then straightens before you can fully register it. No one has taught you the protocol for this. No one has written the etiquette guide for what to do when the rules of optics decide they're optional. You try to look at something ordinary, a bench, a patch of concrete, but the knowledge of wrongness follows you like a smell you can't wash off. Somewhere nearby, a photographer mutters to themselves, reviewing shots on their digital screen. You overhear them. That's not no, that's not right. Their voice is barely above the hum of the crowd, but the finality in it makes your skin go tight. You realize, belatedly, that none of these shadows, not yours, not the trees, not the telephone poles, are quite the right shade of black anymore. They're richer, glossier, like wet paint, and there is depth in them, not figurative depth. Depth as in the suggestion that you could step into them and not stop falling. One shadow, in particular, a lamppost, seems darker than the others. So dark it is almost blue. You catch yourself staring into it far longer than you mean to, the way a diver might stare into deep water, trying to decide whether the movement they just saw was a fish or something else entirely. Then a shape crosses through it, not a shape. From this world, not a dog, not a cyclist, not a bird's quick shadow from overhead. This one has too many edges, and none of them are familiar. It passes and is gone, leaving the lamppost shadow looking pleased. You can't justify that word, but it lodges in your mind all the same. The sun, what remains of it, is ringed in that frozen corona, but here, on the ground, the shadows have begun to act like they are no longer tethered to the same laws. Some appear to pulse, inflating and deflating by millimeters. Others slip slightly sideways when no one is moving. It is during one of these moments that you look down and see your own shadow's head turn, not toward you, but toward someone behind you. The breath you take then is shallow, automatic. You turn to follow its gaze. There's nothing there but another knot of eclipse watchers, their eyes tilted skyward. You look back at your shadow. It is behaving again, mimicking you perfectly, as though it has been caught. All around, the murmurs have thinned into a kind of respectful quiet. It's not reverence, it's watchfulness. Every person here is tuned, consciously or not, to the possibility that the next shift could be the one that makes them break that silence. And no one wants to be first. A man near the curb takes a step back, and his shadow stretched across the asphalt keeps going for an extra pace before snapping back to align with him. He freezes in place, staring down as if hoping that stillness will reset whatever just misfired. His wife tugs at his sleeve. He doesn't look away from the ground. Overhead, the sky holds its false night. The corona flickers almost imperceptibly, but it's enough to make several shadows twitch in unison. You would swear, if pressed, that some of them are leaning toward the light, straining at the edges as if eager to reach whatever is up there. The sense builds that you are inside a vast SLOW moving mechanism, one whose components are not the metal gears and levers of industry, but the intangible alignments of light, space, and time. And it is not built for you. You are only standing in it as it turns, when the first shadow detaches just by an inch, just enough to create the faintest sliver of daylight between itself and the object casting it. You understand that no part of this is performance. The shadow hovers for a breath, then slides back into place, like a heartbeat returning to its rhythm. You look around quickly to see if anyone else saw. A woman in a red scarf meets your eyes, wide, unblinking. She nods once, as if to say yes, it happened, and no, we are not speaking of it. Your own shadow, obedient now, clings to your feet. But you can't shake the thought. It has already proven it can leave. And up above, the corona burns on, indifferent. It comes to you the way certain campfire stories do, not loud, not urgent, but in a voice meant to be leaned toward. The keeper is not anyone you could identify from a crowd. No cloak, no staff, no wild-eyed zeal. They could be a teacher, a librarian, a neighbor who waters their plants precisely at 6 p.m. every day. What makes them the keeper is that they are the last living person who witnessed an eclipse that no official record admits ever happened. You meet them without realizing you've done so. Perhaps you're standing in the hush after the shadows. Strange behavior, and someone at your elbow murmurs, "It's happening again." The tone is conversational, but the words catch like a thorn under your skin. They don't look at you at first. They keep their eyes fixed on the shrinking light, the black disk sliding where it should not slide. Only when the corona flares do they glance sideways, as though confirming that you're still there. A quiet acknowledgement that you have been chosen as an audience. Their voice has a texture like soft paper, unhurried, carrying the faint crackle of someone used to telling things they've been told not to. They speak not of astronomy, but of the other one, the eclipse that lived only in whispers. It was decades ago. The keeper was young, younger than you are now, living in a place that did not often see eclipses. The day had been ordinary enough. Deliveries made, bread cooling on windowsills, laundry snapping in the yard. No charts in the newspaper, no science teachers herding students outside with pinhole viewers. The sun was high, the sky an unbroken pane of summer blue, and then, as they bent to tie a shoe, the light shifted in a way that had no precedent, no warning, No long slide into partial coverage, just a sudden flattening of brightness, as if the color had been dialed down by an invisible hand. And there, suspended in the sky where the sun should have been, was the black circle. The keeper talks about the air, how it thickened, carrying the weight of water without a drop of rain, how the quiet came not from the absence of noise, but from something in the air swallowing the ends of sounds. People in the street froze. Some tried to laugh, make a joke of it. Others backed slowly toward their doors, eyes still lifted. One woman knelt on the pavement, staring so hard at her own shadow that she did not move when a neighbor called her name. The keeper remembers turning toward the bakery across the square and seeing the baker's boy, a friend, holding a tray of rolls gone stone cold in his hands, his face tilted skyward. He did not blink. The bread slipped from the tray without him noticing, and then, in the corner of the keeper's vision, the shadows began to sway. Not like grass or trees. In wind, more like the swaying of people in a room, shifting their weight from foot to foot. Waiting, the keeper never tells the next part the same way twice. Sometimes they say the shadows detached, moving along the cobbles toward the building's edges. Sometimes they say the shadows only leaned, as though drawn toward some invisible line on the ground. But whichever way they tell it, their voice always falters in the same place, like a string pulling tight. It wasn't a person. The keeper insists on that. But it used a person's outline to enter the daylight. One moment, it was flat on the ground, an ordinary absence of light. The next, it was vertical, joined to nothing, standing beside the woman still kneeling on the pavement. She didn't notice. No one did, except the keeper. And once they'd seen it, they couldn't look away. The shape turned, soundlessly, the way a head turns when seeking a scent in the air, and then, and here their voice dips, the timbre dropping as if afraid the thing might still be listening. It stepped back into the woman's shadow. Not into her, not into her body, into her shadow, as if it had merely needed to confirm she was the right one. A moment later, the light returned, not gradually, all at once. The sun was itself again, the air warm and bright. People blinked, rubbed their eyes, muttered about odd clouds. The woman stood, brushing dust from her skirt, and walked away. Only the keeper noticed she now cast two shadows. They never saw her again, nor the baker's boy, nor 3 other people from that street. They simply ceased to be part of the towns. We've not missing, not buried, simply absent, as if they had never existed. The keeper has lived in many places since, but they follow eclipses now, the way some follow storms or comet trails. They say they are not chasing the light, they are tracking the thing that travels inside the dark, the thing that chooses when and where to step out. They have notebooks, dozens filled with dates, locations, crude sketches of shadow behavior. Many of the entries end with nothing unusual. A few end with a single, thick, black dot. The dot, they say, is not to be looked at before bed. Now, here the keeper finishes their story as the corona above you wavers in the false night. Their eyes narrow, not at the sky, but at the pavement between you. You follow their gaze. The shadows are behaving themselves again, or so it seems. But one, a thin splinter cast by a nearby signpost, appears to throb faintly, in and out, as if it's breathing through shallow lungs. The keeper doesn't smile, but there is a flicker in their expression, the ghost of recognition. Without looking at you, they murmur, "You might want to watch that one." They step back into the crowd, before you can ask them anything else. Their coat blends into the folds of other coats, their head into the bobbing silhouettes. And just like that, the keeper is gone. You think you could follow, but in the space where they stood, the ground is bare. No footprint, no shadow, only the corona's unblinking fire above, and the creeping certainty that if you look down at your own shadow right now, you might find it watching something over your shoulder. It begins with a roar that is not the sky, metal hooves, the distant roll of cannon wheels, the sound of something in motion that cannot be undone once it has started. You smell gunpowder before you see it, and then you realize you are not where you were a heartbeat ago. The air here is thick with the breath of hundreds of men and beasts, layered over the sour tang of churned-up earth. You stand just off to the side of a rolling slope, its grass flattened in lines that do not grow naturally. Above the ridge, banners snap, half of them a color you don't recognize, the other half torn to ribbons. There is shouting, but the words make no sense to you, as if they've been half translated and dropped back into mouths that don't quite fit them. You hear the thud of boots, the clink of sabers against belt buckles. Somewhere to your right, a drummer keeps a steady rhythm, his face pale and set. Then light shifts. It's subtle at first, a cooling of tone, a shadow passing where no cloud exists. You see an officer lift his head mid-shout, his mouth still open but no sound emerging. His horse, mid-stride, freezes for the briefest instant before stamping once against the dirt. Uncertain dot, the dimming quickens. Not dusk, not stormlight. This is the color of an old photograph left too long in a drawer. One by one, the soldiers turn their faces upward. The shouting dies on the air. A single musket misfires, the crack loud in the sudden stillness, and its smoke coils strangely, not upward, but sideways, toward the horizon, and then the sun is gone, not eased away, not eclipsed in neat celestial geometry, simply gone, replaced by a blackness rimmed in pale fire. The corona hangs there, quivering like something alive. On the ground, shadows grow hard and spill long, linking the feet of men who moments ago would have killed each other. You hear no command, no agreement, but the movement across the slope stops. Horses stand with ears twitching, breath steaming. A man with a bayonet slowly lowers it, his eyes glassy. Two enemies only paces apart blink at each other, and neither moves. It is then you notice the other shadows, the ones that do not match any living form on the field. They creep in from the edges, elongated shapes that stretch impossibly far, their heads indistinct, edges feathered as if in heat haze. One reaches the wheel of a cannon and curls around it like ivy, pausing as though tasting the metal. Another slides across the grass, toward a prone soldier. When it touches his boot, he exhales sharply, sits up, and stares into space with eyes that reflect the corona's pale fire. Across the slope, a standard-bearer lets his flag fall. It lands without a sound. The drummer has stopped playing. His sticks are frozen mid-air, his mouth parted in a silent question you will never hear. Somewhere far to your left, a horse screams, but it is cut short, not by violence, but as though the sound itself has been taken. In its place comes a low vibration you feel in your ribs, the same wrong music hum from before, only deeper, older. The men hear it. You can see it in their faces, a strange slackness, as if they are half asleep but standing upright. One soldier turns slowly, scanning the field as if trying to count something. His gaze passes over you without pause, but you feel seen all the same. When his eyes lift to the corona, His lips move in a pattern that is not prayer, not language. The shadow at his heels quivers and then slides away toward another man. Minutes or centuries pass. No one moves to fire a weapon. No blade is raised. The war has stopped, not in truce, but in suspension, like a candle flame held in cupped hands. And then, without warning, the light returns. It slams back into the world like the opening of a furnace door. The heat is sudden, the colors too loud. Men blink hard, their grips tightening on weapons, as if unsure why they'd let them hang loose. Someone shouts an order, another shouts back. The battle wants to resume, but it's uneven, hesitant. You glance at the drummer. His sticks hang, limp at his sides. In the dirt by his feet lies the drum itself, its skin torn straight down the center, as though something inside had pushed to get out. Above, the sun burns ordinary and indifferent. But scattered across the slope, a handful of men stand still, gazes fixed on nothing, their shadows just a fraction out of alignment. One of them, the officer you saw earlier, lowers his head until his eyes meet yours from across the field. He smiles without warmth, not recognition exactly, but acknowledgement, as if you are both witnesses to something the others will spend the rest of their lives forgetting. And then he turns, mounts his horse, and rides away from the battlefield entirely. The first hint is in the air's rhythm. Eclipses are meant to be predictable, a celestial train timetable, written decades in advance. But what unfolds now feels like a station clock that has begun to tick out of order around you. The crowd holds still, necks craned toward the black coin in the sky. Yet as you glance from one face to another, you notice a strange inconsistency. Not everyone is lit by the same quality of light. A man a few feet away is haloed in a dull, late afternoon warmth, while the woman beside him is cast in something closer to the silver of moonlight. It is as if they occupy slightly different hours. You test the ground with your own shadow. It matches you, mostly. But there's a faint doubling, a transparent echo, a half step behind the real thing, like an after-image that refuses to fade. The soundscape fractures next. Somewhere far to your left, a bird calls, and you hear the exact same call. A second later from the right, identical in tone and timing, as if the moment had been replayed from another angle. A low murmur passes through the crowd, then stops, then starts again, exactly the same words, the same cough interrupting someone's sentence. Two identical instants laid over each other, out of register, the hairs along your arms lift. You blink, and for half a breath, the eclipse above is no longer total, but a thin crescent. Another blink, and it's gone back to totality. Around you, nobody moves, as if they too are trapped between frames. It's then that the fragments start to bleed in, the anachronisms at the periphery of vision. The clothing changes first. A man who was wearing a nylon windbreaker now seems to be in a heavy wool coat, the kind stitched in another century. A child's plastic bottle becomes a tin canister, then back again, the transition smooth as a sigh. A wristwatch face flickers through three designs, digital, analog, something, with a dial you've never seen before. You catch sight of a woman with a parasol, her hair pinned in a style you only know from photographs. She steps forward and vanishes behind a man in a baseball cap, but never emerges from the other side. The air smells different too. The acrid temps of diesel replaced for a few seconds by wood smoke, then by the faint salt sharpness of a sea you cannot see. And above it all, The corona flickers in a way that is not natural light, but more like a film reel spliced with frames from another story. The clock that was wrong somewhere, a bell tolls, not loud, not near, but deep enough to vibrate in the sternum. You turn, expecting to see the spire of some old building, but there is only open ground and the outlines of people frozen mid-gesture. The toll comes again and again, but the intervals are uneven, like a pendulum swinging through syrup. Your eyes find a man holding a pocket watch open in his palm. The second hand is not moving smoothly. It jerks, then slides backward, then jumps forward to beat. He looks up at you, startled, not because you're watching him, but because you seem to be moving at the same tempo he is. For a moment, you share the sensation of being in step with something else entirely, outside the human cadence, the history that doesn't fit in the hum of the eclipse's stillness. You hear fragments of speech, not in unison, but overlapping, like radio. Stations bleeding into one another. Some voices speak a dialect you know, but the words are outdated. Others carry the clipped formality of an era that never had microphones, and just faintly layered beneath them all. A tongue that might not be human at all. Its syllables full of angles your mind can't hold on to. You recall, unbidden, the oddity you once read about, ancient accounts of eclipses that, according to modern tables, shouldn't have existed. Dates where the sky went dark centuries ahead of or behind schedule. Locations where the shadow path made no sense for the moon's orbit. Scholars filed them away as errors in the record, mistakes in translation, exaggerations of storms or volcanic ash dot. But here, under this wrong-colored light, you wonder if they were reports from moments like this, where something in time snagged, looped back on itself, and let 2 centuries breathe the same air. The people who notice are not the only one who sees it. Scattered through the crowd are others whose eyes flick rapidly, tracking the same flickers in clothing, in light, in sound. You recognize the expression, the narrowed focus of someone walking through a world that no longer responds in straight lines. One of them, an elderly man with the posture of someone used to watching horizons, catches your gaze and nods once. He taps his temple, then points to the ground at your feet. You look down and see your doubled shadow again. But now the echo shadow is looking the other way. When you look back up, the man is gone. The slide back it ends without warning, as these beats always do. One blink and the crowd is lit in a single tone again, the soundscape in proper order. Your watch, if you have one, ticks normally. The air smells once more of what it did before: grass, metal, the distant scent of sun-warmed asphalt. The corona still burns above, but the sense of being in a layered moment, one folded over another, has thinned, like steam dissipating. And yet, as you breathe, you have the distinct impression that you have not returned to the moment you left, but to something a hair's breadth adjacent to it, a near duplicate, almost perfect, except for whatever detail you haven't spotted yet. It's the smell you notice first, not salt and brine, but the absence of it. For an island, that's wrong. Air this close to the ocean should carry the endless churn of the tide, the mineral tang, the faint decay of kelp and shells. Here, the air is still, odorless, as if the sea has stepped back beyond the reach of your senses. The village is quiet, but not empty. Doors stand open, laundry hangs mid-flap on its lines, bowls of half-peeled fruit rest on stoops. Somewhere in the distance a rooster calls, though the tone is hollow, more echo than voice. You wander along a packed sand path that gives way to stone. the stones to a slotted pier stretching over black water, and then you feel it, a slow, deliberate dimming. The villagers emerge as the light thins, not to marvel, not to chatter, but to stand in their doorways, arms at their sides, heads tilted with the same angle, the same stillness. The sun shrinks, and the world drains of shadow, as though every object is being drawn into a single, flat sheet of grey dot. The memory that predates memory, you learn, without asking, that they have seen this before. A woman with a face as creased, as driftwood glances at you once, then speaks without moving her lips from their resting line. It comes when the tide forgets where to be. Another voice, from somewhere behind her. We keep our feet still, so it doesn't measure us, and then, don't look for the line. You'll see it anyway. They speak as though reciting lines worn smooth by generations. You have the unsettling impression that these words were waiting for you, and for anyone else unlucky enough to arrive on a day when noon turns to night. The liner appears at the edge of the pier. At first it is nothing more than a darker seam on the water, narrow and straight. Then it widens, not with the tide's slow breathing, but with the precision of something unfolding itself. The water beyond the line seems thicker, a shade too opaque, and you realize it does not reflect the corona-lit sky at all. It reflects nothing. One by one, the villagers turn away from it, eyes on the ground. You alone watch as the line creeps closer, the pier's end vanishing into it without a splash. The posts that remain above the surface cast no shadow on that side, and then you understand what the woman meant. There is no sea beyond that line. There is only an expanse that accepts matter as if swallowing thought. The crossing something breaks. The surface, it isn't a boat, it isn't swimming. It simply arrives, upright, without disturbing the water, as if it has stepped from one flat plane into another. Its shape is human at a glance, but the edges are soft, like a reflection smeared by a hand. The figure pauses on the pier's invisible continuation, head turning from side to side. You sense it is listening, but not with ears. When it faces you, there is no face to see, only the idea of one. Shifting with the corona's flicker, a man 2 houses down breathes in sharply through his nose, too loud. The figure tilts, almost curious. Then, slowly, it moves toward the shore. The villagers hold perfectly still. Your own muscles want to shake, but you remember the woman's words. Keep your feet still. The figure passes between you and the others, leaving behind no shadow, no footprint, but a hollow coolness that clings to your skin. It pauses once more before the open door of a house with no occupant. Then it steps inside, and the dim shape of it melts upward into the ceiling, vanishing into whatever waits there. It is not gradual. One moment, the sky is a rim of fire. The next, the sunlight slams back, harsh and gold. The tide scent returns as though it has been thrown in your face. Somewhere, a child begins crying, not out of fear, but as if waking from a dream they'd been under too long. The line at sea is gone. The pier is whole again, wet planks glistening in the ordinary noon. The villagers resume the rhythm of hanging laundry, peeling fruit, pulling in nets, each motion smooth, unhurried, untouched. By urgency, you realize no one has looked to see whether the house where the figure entered is still empty. They call themselves scientists, and they are, but you sense, in the way they stand at the world's ragged corners, that research is only the excuse. What they're really doing is keeping an appointment, one they may not even know. They may dot, you find yourself among them in a high plateau somewhere far from every map in your memory. The horizon here is an unbroken sweep, as if the land has been ironed flat by a giant hand. Their tents hunker low against a steady wind, guy ropes singing faintly as the air passes. Instruments stand ready on tripods, their lenses aimed not at the sun, but at the edges of where its light will soon falter. The leader, grey-haired, skin cracked by weather, eyes like frost, is checking a clock that's been hand-wound, its tick unnervingly loud. Another researcher sits cross-legged in the dirt, sketching concentric circles in a battered notebook, muttering numbers like charms. Overhead, the sky is clean. No sign yet of the moon's slow theft, but all of them keep glancing, not upward, but toward the east, the direction from which the shadow will come, spilling itself faster than any storm. The waiting, they've been here for weeks. You can feel it in the baked smell of canvas, the faded lines in their cheeks from goggles, worn too long. The wind has smoothed the edges of their camp, dulled the color of their flags. Every day they've run the drills, calibrate sensors, check batteries, rehearse voice calls into radios that now hang silent. One of them, a woman with a scar along her jaw, tells you in an absent tone that they're not here for the eclipse itself, but for what rides inside the umbra. She says it like she's quoting from a manual that doesn't exist. She shows you a photograph from the last expedition, a blurred strip of shadow along a ridgeline, and in that strip, something darker still, its outline inconsistent, as though it couldn't quite choose a single shape. First sign, the wind drops. Not dies, just drops, like a dial turned down. Their heads lift in unison. Clocks are checked, notepads closed. The plateau's birds, sparse to begin with, vanish entirely. Someone clicks on an audio recorder. The light begins to bleach. They move quickly but without panic, adjusting lenses, pointing parabolic microphones toward the east. A drone lifts from a folding pad, buzzing into the air like an insect eager for nectar. Its camera tilts downward rather than up, and then, across the land's flat face, you see it. The shadow's edge, a bruise sliding toward you faster than your eyes can reconcile. It swallows the color from rock and scrub in an instant, flattening the world into a single plane. The encounter, the grey-haired leader raises a hand. Everything stops. In the middle of that shadow, something moves. Not with it, inside it. It darts ahead, then lags behind, then seems to fold back on itself. Through binoculars, it's not much more than a disturbance, a heat haze in reverse. But the instruments react. Needles jump. Sensors spit out strings of numbers that no one tries to interpret aloud. The thing in the shadow is tracing the plateau's contour like a fingertip along a seam. At one point, it seems to pause over a cluster of standing stones the team had ignored. You feel the air around you thicken, as if whatever it is has decided to breathe where you are. A radio crackles with a burst of static that almost resolves into speech. Almost then the shadow, the true one, the moon's, sweeps over you. The temperature drops. The world narrows to the corona's impossible fire and the sound of your own blood. Aftermath, and then it's gone. The light rushes back. The wind resumes its long, slow scrape across the plateau. Birds return inhesitant. Loops, instruments blink green again, the data safe inside. But you see their faces. These scientists, these professionals, look like people who've returned from somewhere they can't name. The woman with the scar snaps her notebook shut, tucks it deep into her jacket. The grey-haired leader exhales, a sound you might mistake for relief if not for the tremor in it. No one speaks of what they saw, but in the corner of a table, a single printout lies curling in the dry air, a still frame from the drone's feed, shadow to left and right, and in the middle a silhouette unlike any machine or creature you know, leaning forward as if it, too, is watching. It begins with the simplest of statements. This one shouldn't exist. The words arrive in your mind as if carried there, not spoken aloud, not yours, but as clear as any sound you've ever heard. You're standing among a crowd, just as before, but this time you notice the difference at once. There is no buzz of anticipation, no camera clicks, no tidy rows of eclipse glasses, because, officially, there is no reason for anyone to be looking up today. And yet, the light has started to change. It's not on NASA's tables, or in amateur astronomers' bulletins, or on any of the apps that plot the moon's shadow decades. Ahead, this date is clean, ordinary. The sun should cross the sky unbroken. Still, there's that cooling in the tone of things, that hush in the air, that pull toward the horizon that isn't wind, isn't gravity, but a sideways kind of force. That makes you brace your feet without knowing why. People who moments ago were on errands have stopped mid-stride. A cyclist is standing astride their bike, one foot poised, staring upward. From a cafe's open window, a barista leans out, holding a pot of coffee half tilted. Dark liquid, trembling at the lip. The moon, or something like it, is moving. Across the sun, no record, no witness you try to reason it through. Some kind of unpredicted transit. A satellite large enough to mimic the disk, but none of it holds. The shape is too perfect. The speed is wrong, slower, as if it's making sure it is seen. Around you, no one speaks. Not in awe, but in the same expectant silence as people awaiting the drop in a piece of music they know by heart. You realize, with a prickling at the back of your neck, that these faces aren't surprised. They've been here before. The shadow arrives when the darkness lands. It's absolute. Not deepening dusk, not even the pale ringed corona you've come to expect, but a fullness, a black so complete the shapes of those around you dissolve, and then they return, faintly outlined, not by sunlight, but by a shimmer from somewhere behind you. You turn, slowly, but there is only more darkness, layered and thick, like folds of fabric being drawn across the world. Somewhere in that dark, something breathes. The exhale is vast, cool and deliberate. You feel it pass through you, and the memory of every strange eclipse you've experienced in these beats flashes behind your eyes. The breathing shadow, the keeper's double, the soldier's fixed gaze, the creeping line at sea, the heat haze, figure on the plateau, all here, braided into one moment. The choosing shapes start to move in the black, not toward you, not toward anyone in particular. They weave among the still forms of the crowd, pausing sometimes, leaning in. You notice they never overlap with each other, as though some silent map has been drawn in advance. Each one keeps to its own path. When one passes close, you see it is neither fully formed nor entirely void, more like a hole in the idea of shape. For a fraction of a second, your own outline wavers in sympathy, and you have the nauseating thought that you might be easier to erase than you realize. A woman 3 paces away inhales sharply, and when she exhales, her shadow is gone. She stands. As before, expression blank, but there is a space on the ground where something important used to be. The return to nothing, no countdown, no reversal. The light snaps back into place as though someone has lifted a lid. The sun hangs, unblemished. In the blue, the warmth is normal, the shadows obedient. The cyclist rides on. The barista withdraws into the cafe. People resume their errands, their conversations. You are the only one still looking at the sky. Pulling out your phone, you search for any mention. Social media, astronomy forums, weather anomalies. There's nothing, not a photo, not a remark. It is as if it didn't happen at all. But when you glance down, you see that your shadow's head is turned, not matching you, not facing forward, but gazing over your shoulder at something only it can see, and with that, the arc's circle closes. The beats have wound you through places and centuries. But here's the quiet, unspoken truth that lingers as you step out of the frame. Maybe these aren't separate incidents at all. Maybe there has only ever been one eclipse, wearing many masks, finding you over and over until it no longer needs to move, the sun to blot out the light.